The best teams in EU have all qualified through to the FNCS finals and will all be playing for their fair share of just over $1 million, with first place being $300,000. It's time to break down the drop spots, the fights, the storylines, and of course, my predictions. Alright, so this is our drop map. This is what we're looking at with all 50 teams. The two that's not on here right now is Shizo and Force and Vico and Jackson. So if we first look at Vico and Jackson, historically where they've gone this season is into Rave Cave. Now, Rave Cave has not worked out so well for them, so they ended up moving to Tilted Towers to qualify, and guess who is there? Currently uncontested. So for me, big story coming into this finals, Hen, Mr. Savage, yet again, will probably be fighting up against Vico and Jackson come the finals. Looking at some other fights that are going to be interesting, Reality Falls, we've got Faki and Fremont going against Vortex and Hykerus. This already happened during the semi-finals, and in all honesty, neither team came out on top, because I think Vortex and Hykerus ended up actually moving down to where Noah and Reason are now, which was Fungi Farm, I think it's called, for them to qualify, and then that's also how Faki and Fremont qualified. These two are two of the most aggressive teams in the lobby. They will just take any fight they can get into, so seeing them going up against each other in finals is at least going to be very entertaining. Similarly, Rave Cave's going to be very, very interesting because you've got Thomas HG and Tripper, Loki and Sangild, Nebs Marine, and QB and Ferdoxy. I'm guessing these guys are trying to play for the grapple gloves like they have historically throughout this season. However, Thomas HG and Tripper basically instantly get the grapple gloves every time they land in Rave Cave, so I just doubt this is going to be successful. I'm interested to see if this doesn't go well for Nebs and Marine, if they end up moving back to Fungi Farm to contest Noah and Reason for these ones, like they have been during the qualifiers. However, this just hasn't been working at all. My hopes really aren't that high for Nebs and Marine, unfortunately. I think one of the most entertaining off-spawn fights will be Trulex and Chicho against Kezix and 4ZR. If you're a follower of EU back in Chapter 2 Season 2, you will know 4ZR fights a lot for his drops. He does not care about an off-spawn engagement going against then Mitro and CRR. Trulex and Chicho have been the best team in Rocky Reels basically throughout the entire chapter, so this is going to be a really good fight. But the kind of interesting dynamic here is the fact that Kami and Sei right above them will almost definitely land on the grapple gloves. I've seen them do that in the G8 tournament already when their people are fighting down here. So this fight is interesting, but not only that, it's going to buff one of our top teams, Kami and Sei. Down in Chonker Speedway, there's another interesting fight of Skyjun and Destru going up against Yuzuri and Kiruo. Skyjun and Destru in two different occasions 1v2'd Floki Clement here during the qualifiers, which is very entertaining to watch. However, Yuzuri and Kiruo have not been landing here throughout FNCS. I've seen some scrims, they're doing it now, but I don't know how this is going to go. I expect Skyjun to go north, Kiruo to go south, and they both disengage. I don't really expect either team to do well if they do that, because I just think they're both going to fight off spawn. But again, another interesting dynamic is if Yuzuri and Kiruo don't do good here, they're probably going to move back to Sanap Station where they were getting rolled by Joe and Ziandi before. And this actually might benefit Joe and Ziandi because they seem to do better when they're contested off spawn. It seems to give them the storm surge that they need. If we look through some of the semi-finals games, they weren't really doing that well until they managed to win one game out of it, but overall across all of them, when they're uncontested, they don't usually do as good. So this actually could work in their favor. Similarly here, this is going to be a weird one because you basically have two teams. You've got Gooden and Vaken going against Flois and Hellfire, both basically just fighting over the grapple gloves that are in the middle. I'm not sure how this is going to play out. Are they going to 50-50 drop for this? Are they going to land in their respective areas, try to kind of stay safe? I think this is going to go back and forth, game after game, but I think Pink and Anas are really going to be able to take advantage of this and just rotate through. If this fight drags on a little bit, get some easy tags, maybe even some easy eliminations, so the fact that these two are set up here could really benefit Pink and Anas. But similarly, Pink and Anas have been pushing down below to get the grapple gloves a lot. Not every game, they don't rely on them, but with Kira and Jurdy landing there, a little bit of a stronger team, I'm not sure if they're going to key them every game for the grapple gloves, so I'm not sure what Pink and Anas's strategy is going to be going into the finals, but either moving down to WQ these guys some games, they've got some good surge above. I think they're really well set up in all honesty. The top right of the map is really interesting to me because Cheatin' and Gripey essentially land on these grapple gloves, split loot this top right side, and then go straight up onto the kind of mountain here on the volcano to third party the fight, which is Michael and Astro against Hardfight ADN. Regardless, they can get some great surge tagging when these two are sitting in there trying to loot, and similarly up onto Syned and Firehunter. So Cheatin' and Gripey get up here really quickly, but Syned and Firehunter, are sitting up here. They take a long time to loot, so it takes them a long time to get up here, which means that Cheatin' and Gripey might be really good for surge. Similarly, with two teams contesting, Walks and Roban and Karma and Japko, this could be a free kind of maybe top 10 for Cheatin' and Gripey if they kind of play it right. So let's talk mid-map. And the fights we're seeing off spawn here are Arthur and Mixon against Chips and Artskill. I'm not entirely sure how this one's going to go. I haven't watched Chips and Artskill yet in this drop swap because they've been kind of moving around the map throughout the entire season. However, Arthur and Mixon have done really good here so far. Again, I've not seen how they actually end up fighting it, so I can't particularly give it either way. I want to give it to my balls. My balls? I don't want to give it to my balls. I want to give it to my boys Chips and Artskill though, because they're my guys. So that would be cool to see them do well. And of course, the biggest fight, the kind of most impactful fight I think we'll see the entire finals, will be Podesai and X-Squeeze against Tayson and Chapix. Now what's interesting about this is that Tayson, regardless of what the season is, the meta is, will nearly always prioritize getting some form of uncontested drop. It's been a long time since we've seen him fighting off spawn in a finals, so this is going to be a really interesting fight to watch against Podesai and X-Squeeze. Now straight up, I think Tayson Chapix are an infinitely stronger team than Podesai and X-Squeeze, in particular off spawn. However, coming into the season, I would easily say that Tayson and Chapix would have won the entire thing. However, them being contested and fighting off spawn throws a huge spanner in the works. Because you also have to think what effect that has on the teams around them, like Malibuka and Mustache, who are down here. Free tags third party in this fight. Up and above, Queasy and Vino too. Similarly, free tags if this fight lasts any time at all. So when I come into the predictions, we're going to start that now with the top 10, which I'm going to put Tayson and Chapix in 10th. Again, if they were uncontested off spawn, I think they're first. I think they win this season. They look so good in pretty much everything they've played. But right now, being contested off spawn, I'm just not certain that I'll be able to say that they can win enough games off spawn in order to still win the entire series, in particular with some of the best teams in the world surrounding them. In 9th, I'm going to go with Vidil and Janice. They've looked really strong all season. A couple times they kind of missed qualification by a small margin. And they've also shown that they're a team that does not rely on grapple gloves. Even though you can see that they have the grapple gloves right next to them, no one reason are pretty much going to get these every single game, and it just doesn't make sense to push them. Do you also think German team's going to push another German-speaking team? Probably not, but still, they've proven that if this particular setup is there, they can do really good, so I think they're a real strong pick to be in the top 10. In number 8, I'm going with iDrop and Juriki. I felt like these guys were like a top 10 team for, I think, pretty much the entire chapter, but last season it was a bit of a shame to see them narrowly miss out in qualification in multiple different seasons, or in multiple different sessions. Real shame. Now that they're here, I think they're going to do real good, and they can definitely perform at this kind of level of tournament. However, one of the issues I think I will put out that I think they may have is just straight up Storm Surge. There really isn't many opportunities of players around them. If you look at the map here, you can see Carmi and Vanyak over to their west, Pablo's up to their north, and then Queasy and Vino's here. So Queasy and Vino will usually take these hills that are right beside them, so they're like the best spots on this side. They basically have no one to tag, so they have to probably fight Carmi or Pablo. If they move south, this fight's probably going to be over really quickly, and there's not that many teams they can farm here, unless they can kind of get ahead of these teams and farm these guys coming outside of Rave Cave. I think they might struggle with Surge, but if they come in prep for that, I think they could be absolutely chilling. In at number 7, I'm going to go with Cheatin' and Gripey. I think, again, they've performed really, really well this season. They've impressed me with their good understanding of how to play out high-level games. Especially watching a lot of their end games, they can pretty easily get away with using minimal materials due to the fact that they know how to sprint properly. You know, they are a grapple glove team, but they're one of the teams who's not afraid in using those grapple gloves in the mid game if they get some far rotates. And then when it comes to end game, they're just really good at utilizing a low amount of mats when they rotate. And to me, that kind of shows me that A, they understand how to stagger and how to stay away from other players, but also that if they're in a kind of bad position in 5th zone, they can still get relatively deep into the end game with minimal mats. In at number 6, I'm going with my boy Trippern and Thomas HD. Now, I think this actually might be very controversially low on the list, but I think from here to the top, anyone could actually just win the entire FNCS, just as pretty much is the same with every season. So this is my personal opinion on what I've seen them do so far. And the games that they've been more successful, they often get a lot of their surge damage done in drop swap by kind of pushing those teams. I've done a whole video covering this already, but some of the games that I see them not do that well is when there's not that many teams in their drop swap, which is a bit of an interesting dynamic. Obviously, I'm saying a bunch of negative things, but if these guys play on their top game, they are first, straight up. Coming in at number 5, I'm going for Pink and Anas. They've impressed me so much this season with their versatility. You know, back in Chapter 3, Season 1, they were very one-dimensional. They were very flat. Basically, if they were contested off spawn, they really wouldn't be able to do that much. If they had to fight in the mid-game, they would kind of be scuffed for the rest of the game. If they didn't play high, they wouldn't get that many points. Now, it's like they can do anything. They're pushing teams in early game, they've qualified while contested, they can play low ground, I think in one of the qualifiers, winning a game with 11 eliminations from the low ground. So they are so versatile right now, and I think this is just their season to just easily jump into the top 5. In at 4th place, I'm going to go with Andlex and Snazy. Now, if you'd asked me about this last season, I would have told you go away. These two have not been necessarily performing that well when it comes to finals in a long time. However, Anderlecht and Sneezy have been on the grind this season, and I've not asked them yet, but potentially one of the reasons for that is of course the FNCS Invitational coming up in November. Now, if you look at the list of players who have qualified, you'll notice a trend of all of the EU players. There is not one single French player there, and that's because over the last 2 seasons, none of the French players have played well enough to qualify. So I think Anderlecht and Sneezy are on the grind, they want to get invited, they want to do good, and based on their qualifier performance, I think they can absolutely do that. They won qualifier 2, and that's now Anderlecht's 6th qualifier win, which is very, very impressive, but I hope this time they can translate that into a finals performance. In third, I'm going to go with Malabuka and Murstache. In last season's finals, for example, every game they won off spawn outside of one of them, they placed in the top 10, and they placed 4th overall, and they had the highest average eliminations as well. We do know their team was able to absolutely frag out. I'm just not entirely sure how they're going to do actually being uncontested off spawn for once. I hope that they do well and win, because I feel like these guys deserve to finally win an FNCS title, but again, it's really difficult to say because we haven't really seen them be uncontested off spawn that much. Another interesting note about that though is because remember the Podesine X-Suisse fight is kind of going on right next to them with Tayson and Chapix, they could easily third party this and get some free tags, so that could be really, really good. And because Cammy and Seti are probably going to go for these grapple gloves down here, then they might also have basically access to this middle grapple glove every single game, assuming another team doesn't switch up their drop spot. Second place, I am going with Cammy and Seti. Now Cammy and Seti is just like a shoe-in for the top 5. When I look at this team, I'm like, where in the top 5 are they going to place? I'm not even asking the question, are they going to be in the top 5? I'm asking the question, can they play perfectly enough to win the entire season? Now in my eyes, it's as close as it could possibly be between them and my first place pick, which I'll come back to. But they're just set up so nicely off spawn. Like I mentioned, they can third party this Trulex and Chicho against Kezix and 4ZR fight if they want to. Similarly, on the east side, Blackchat and Kombic will be fighting against DKS and Deceptos. Either way, Cammy and Seti are set up so well this season that it's going to be honestly really difficult to predict them outside of the top 3, or even if they don't play that well. But usually for Cammy and Seti's performances, if they want to win a tournament, they have to play perfectly, because they don't have these big games. They don't have like a 10, 12, 15 elimination game ever. It's usually just like 5, 6, 7s and just constant top 5s. So you gotta ask the question, like, how perfect can they play? And I've seen them not play that perfectly this season. We saw not making it to round 4 in qualifier 1, which was quite surprising, and then also even going down to Surge in a game in qualifier number 2, which was very surprising because they are such a well-established team. Hopefully they've learned from all of these mistakes, and if I see them win FNCS again, I'll be a very, very happy man. But right now, I've got them in second. And in my first place, I'm going to go with Queasy and Vino. I think these two are just hot off the tails of their both wins in Season 1 and Season 2. Firstly, it would be interesting if they did manage to win this, because then it would be a combination of either Queasy and or Vino would have won every FNCS in Chapter 3, which is kind of a cool thing. But when I'm looking at the teams in the lobby, and I'm saying who is the height teams that are here, who can dominate on top of the lobby, Tayson and Chapix, absolutely one of the biggest teams, but if they're contested off spawn, they're not necessarily going to have the materials to be able to do that every single game. I drop in Juriki, who again we said may struggle with Surge. Even though I put my top 10, I think Queasy and Vino are an infinitely better height team than them. I've got Lucia and Nefreezy, who again is a really good height team, and they've definitely impressed me throughout the qualifiers, but I just think they're nowhere near the standard of Queasy and Vino. And again, Cheating and Gripey, who've been playing height a lot, so usually Cheating and Gripey will take height in the second moving zone, and Queasy and Vino have a significantly better lockdown on it at that time, so I don't think with a team as experienced as Queasy and Vino on high ground, Cheating and Gripey are going to have an opportunity to take it at all. And then on top of that, the games they don't get height, they've been doing really, really well. There was a match in qualifier 1 where they played low and mid ground and ended up with 13 eliminations and third. Hey, like and subscribe.